Hello, hello, hello. My name is Robert. I am the recovery guy, and you have entered into The Fix. Hello. It is good to be back with you. Of course, my name is Robert, and I am always excited to share with you what's been placed on my heart and my mind and things that I go through and experience in my personal recovery, because I think what's relevant and important to me is probably going to have a degree of relevancy and importance to you, because at the end of the day, we all use a variation of the foundational tools that we are given as part of our plan of recovery. And I think you would agree with that as well. And today is no different, but I'll tell you what, I can't wait for the first recording session to come on, because I'm like that horse in the gate, or that bull, that's locked up and getting ready for that gate to open and charge out and start running. And I start feeling the energy and the creativity about Friday or Saturday. And by Sunday, my head is racing and all these thoughts. And by Monday, everything is sort of crystallized, and I begin putting things down on paper, and then boom, here I am. And so today is one of those days. Hey, huge shout out to all of you who are celebrating various lengths of sobriety. I mean, at the end of the day, for all of us, it's one day at a time, and I get it. However, it is wonderful to celebrate months and years and even decades. And today, my friend Debbie Bay is celebrating 13 years of continual sobriety. 13 years. And I remember getting 13 years and how astounded I was that as a person who would swear off at 8 a.m. and today's going to be different. And by noon, I was hammered, I was drunk, I was high, I was back into that negative behavior. And to be able to put together 1 day, 2 days, 30 days, 60, 90 days, 6 months, a year, and now 13 years. Hey, my hat is off to you, Debbie. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep influencing others that they can see who you have become, and they would want to become that as well. Which really brings me to today's topic. Now, some of you have known me for a long time, and back in 2006, I created my first website, and it was called becomingwellnow.com. And over a number of years of trying to, find my message and find my voice, and working with, web extraordinaire John Barker, and John and I worked on developing things. And then a number of years ago, I transitioned into the recovery guy, right? And so now it's recoveryguy.org. And our motto is from broken to whole, because that's what is our transformation. We were broken. For some of us, as the Bible would say, we are without remedy, and yet we experience a life transformational resurrection, where on one hand, we are so different than who we are, we almost appear new, but we're not new, because there's still elements of who we were, right? And so that is the art of becoming whole. And I was actually reading an Instagram post by one of my friends, and she was talking about undoing shame and not being who she thought she was, and this transformation of energy, of confidence, of self-awareness. Now she views herself very differently. And so one of her followers, introduced the word kintsugi. It's a Japanese word, and it really feeds right into our motto at Recovery Guide, which again is from broken to whole, right? And so again, today, the art of becoming whole. And I use that terminology because kintsugi is actually Japanese art. It is a way of putting broken pottery pieces back together with gold, and built on the idea that in embracing flaws and imperfection, you can create an even stronger, more beautiful piece of art. And I was reading an online by Tina Ayuda, Ayuda, very interesting background, and I appreciate. And one of the things that the article goes on to say is that every break, you're going to love this, every break is unique. And instead of repairing them again like new, this 400-year-old technique actually highlights the scars as part of the design. Isn't that, don't you just love that? I gravitate to that so much, and I think you do too. And if you don't now, wait till we develop this notion as part of this podcast, and I think you're going to love it as much as I do by the time we get to the end of it. Now, let's use this, as Tina would say, as a metaphor for healing ourselves, and it teaches us an important lesson. Sometimes in the process of repairing things that have broken, we actually create something more unique, something more beautiful, and even resilient. And Tina goes on to say that in her particular research, she happened to come across a chef turned author by the name of Candice Kumai, or Kumai. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. I know I got the Candice part right. So check this out. Candice is best known for, I guess, her clean green smoothies. I don't know much about this chef. I guess they're called matcha confections and really healthy comfort foods. But she's got this new book, and I will actually include the link in the podcast description, and it's called Kintsugi Wellness, the Japanese art of nourishing mind, body, and spirit. And again, I'm going to include this in the description. Now, Candice is a classically trained chef, but she takes us on a different journey to healing and health because she's exploring the very powerful and positive message behind kintsugi. And if you know me a lot, you know I love words and how to define them, reshape them, incorporate them into our wellness, our living, because isn't that what we do? You know, I might take particular ingredients for a particular meal, but because I might want to end up with a different flavor based on my flavor profile or taste profiles or other people that I'm entertaining or cooking for, and I might put a little twist on it, either in the combination of the elements I'm creating or how I prepare them, and so on and so forth, just to give it a little twist, a little bit more of who I am. And so that's what this allows us to do, because it has some variable elements as long as we understand the foundational premise of what Kintsugi is looking to do. And it reminds me of this word called synergy. I love synergy, and I actually learned of this word in my medical aspects class when I was getting my degree in alcohol and drug studies back in the early 90s. And synergy is simply the interaction or cooperation of two or more organizations, substances, or other great agents to produce a combined effect. Are you ready for this? Greater than the sum of their separate effects. So in other words, you take me, who I used to be, and God, and or a plan of recovery, and we combine them together, and what we come up with is greater and more powerful and more effective and more energistic than who these components or what these components were when they were by themselves. And so much that's what Kintsugi does. Kintsugi has a synergistic quality to it that allows who I was to be part of the equation or the process of who I will become. Because just like in Kintsugi, I never want to lose sight of who I was. And in spiritual realms, as we would share our testimony of our journey with God, as we would understand God, it's always good to know that God found value in me, that he didn't have to demolish me completely to recreate or resurrect this new version of me. You know, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says that we don't regret the past, nor do we shut the door on it. From a biblical perspective, it's I don't want to lose who I am, because there's power in the testimony of who I am now. And it's the same thing. You know, do you ever watch these shows? I really enjoy and respect people who can restore things. And so I'll watch the classic auction show or you know, restoration shows on vehicles. And I love to watch some of the flippers who flip historic or socially relevant buildings and structures, because they're always looking to create with a sense of newness and restoration, of course, but they always want to include elements of the original design and construction, and that actually adds value to the new product. Did you ever notice that? You know, you can't just have a replica with all new parts. That has one value, but if you want to increase the value, use as many of the original parts as possible, and that in itself will create a higher value. And isn't that the same with you and me? Because as in you and me, there is so much more value and power when I remember or recount my past. Is that the same way with you? I hope in your testimony, and it's why in AA and NA, OA, GA, all of the 12-step programs, even many of the religious programs, we share our experience, strength, and hope with each other, that we might solve our common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism, or fill in the blank, right? And that's a quote from the preamble of Alcoholics Anonymous. We share our experience, our strength, and our hope, because each one of them has its own separate, but yet combined and even greater value when we are assisting others. Right now I'm doing Zoom meetings with the folks, Scott and Melissa, and those who are in charge of Welcome Home Sober Living in Southern California. And I'm doing another meeting on Wednesday nights with Annie's house here in Draper, Utah, which is a residential recovery program, and great, wonderful programs. And I'm dealing with so many newcomers and people who are hoping to become broken to whole, and they want to know the art of becoming whole. So I share so many things, but my point of relation with them is who I was, right? What happened to me, and then I say, this is who I am today, but they see a trail. They can move forward or backward along that line to see who I was. I tell them my strength, really what I'm doing, and my hope, which is how that has translated today, right? And I think we all do the same, and I hope that's your approach. I just don't want people to know what I'm doing today, because that might be construed as arrogance. And I've been accused of having charming arrogance, right? And it's not arrogance, it's confidence. You know, you can't do this as long as Scott and Melissa or Chris or Mary or Angie or Wendy or myself, or in this case, Debbie, or in my buddy Anthony Spo, right? So you can't do that as long as we've been doing this without having a degree of confidence, not confidence in ourselves, but confidence in knowing that if we follow the plan of Kintsugi and use the elements of repairing, right, then we have to succeed. And one of the things I really appreciate is, as part of the Kintsugi reconstruction process, they actually use gold. And if you want to learn more about this in detail, go check out, just Google Kintsugi or follow the link to Candice's book that I'll put in the description, and you'll learn more history about this. But they actually use gold to fill the pieces together. Isn't that wonderful? Gold is considered priceless. It's considered currency. Gold trades on the market, and as the dollar fluctuates, so does the price of gold, because it is valuable. You're encouraged to invest in gold, because at the end of the day, gold will always have its value. Even when you apply the most heat to gold is when the imperfections rise to the top, and you can skim them to even create more pure gold. Gold will never lose its value. And as you and I go through this Kintsugi process of going from broken to whole, we are even more valuable, because it doesn't discount who we were, right? So here we go. I've actually listed some things that just are off the top of my head, and you can let me know if they're relevant for you. Send me a message, through IG or through the podcast or through my website, robert@recoveryguy.com. Remember, my website is recoveryguy.org, but my email address is robert@recoveryguy.com. So send me messages. Let me know what you have on your list. But here we go. Here are just some of the things that I thought of that are relevant to what this Kintsugi process of rebuilding and restoring does. Here we go. And I'll put these in the description as well. It is the perfect compare and contrast between what I did and what I do. Did you get that? The perfect compare and contrast between what I did and what I do. This is important. And the next point will help point that out. Who I thought I was and who I am. Let's keep that in context. Because again, in recovery, we aren't bad people trying to get better. We are sick people trying to get well. And granted, what I did was shameful. I will never agree with the things that I did. But what I did wasn't who I was. Who I was a scared, lonely, self-doubting nothing. That's who I thought I was. And the whole time I was a somebody. I just couldn't see that. And my fear of always being a nothing was so painful on such a deep, spiritual, mental, emotional level that I had to medicate just so I wouldn't kill myself. And we just get lost. We just get lost. So the perfect compare and contrast between what I did and what I do today, who I thought I was, and who I really am. I've always been a person of value. Always have been that person of value. I just didn't think I was. We recover, according to AA and other 12-step programs, we recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. We were never hopeless in our mind and our body. We just seemed that way. It just seemed that way. We never were. It just seemed that way. And we acted upon what seemed to be real. And therefore, it was necessary for me to medicate because I didn't know how to live. I would tell people that I would go through life sideways because facing life head on was far too painful. And alcohol and drugs and the other behavior that I engaged in allowed me to get sideways. And guess what? I'm not sideways no more, man. I am facing life head on, pain or no pain, because I always gain regardless. Here's another important thing, and these aren't in any order. I just randomly thought of them as I was in final preparation for today. My ability to connect with others. That is so true. Especially now with this whole social distancing thing. I would go to Annie's house or I would visit Scott in California, would have opportunity to visit the homes that they have and he and Melissa oversee as part of Welcome Home, and going to Annie's house or going into the prisons or the halfway house for the women's correctional, and you've got that one-on-one, you're right there in the room. Even though there's not a physical touching, there is an emotional and spiritual connection based on proximity. And I actually did a podcast where we discussed physical proximity and how important that is and how we have to make up for that with this whole social distancing thing. But my ability to connect with others is about sharing my story of who I was, what happened to me, and how it is now. And that's part of that Kintsugi process. Also, those I do connect with can use my restoration as evidence that they can achieve this as well. So they're not just looking at me and saying, wow, that's wonderful for you, Robert. You've been able to achieve this, or way to go, Debbie, or way to go, Chaz, way to go, Tess, right? Way to go, Wendy, and all the others of us, Angela and Scott and Melissa and the countless others that are involved in our personal recovery. Congratulations, you've been able to do this. But they think, no, wait a minute. You mean to tell me that if I do this same Kintsugi process and I follow the formula, you think I can have this as well? And of course, you know what the answer is. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path, right? Thank God for Will, for Steve, for Eddie, for Buddy, for Scott, for Tom, for Jack, for Richard, for Texas Mike, for Mona. The list goes on and on and on of all the people who had introduced me to their kintsugi process. And I don't imagine any of them even knew what it was. But just because we don't know what to call something doesn't mean we don't experience it. We just haven't put a label on it. It's just getting well, right? So it's evidence that you can do this also. You know, I was sharing with my friend today, Robert White, and his personal recovery and his time and success he's had in his wellness. And I told him, you know, today has been, 12,407 days for me. And I want you to know that, because if you're at 30, 60, 90, 120, 180, 365, multiple years, I want you to know that one day at a time, piece by piece, we can all achieve this, right? My sponsor, Jack, died with 44 years of personal recovery. What a miraculous milestone. But you know what? I'm following his formula. And I can achieve that as well, because kintsugi, when you follow the formula of piecing these back together, it works for every broken piece. So it's not the broken piece that determines whether or not it can be put back together in this art of becoming whole, but the process by which we do it. Do not forget that. Don't listen to this and say, well, that's fine for you, Robert, but it won't work for me. No, that's a lie. It will work for you. We can all go from broken to whole. Which leads me to my last point. My next point is absolutely anyone can be restored from whatever their past was. Remember, you're not what you did. You did what you did based on who you thought you were. But that's not who you were. You've always been a person of value, just like me. It's also a reminder that I need to continue in my forward progress, because once we become whole, once we go through this kintsugi process, we're still looking at ourselves from the inside out, because we know we might have missed a piece or missed a chip. So again, kintsugi is a process, not a destination. Which goes to my next point is, if we can accomplish this, what else can we do, right? If I can feel this way today, if you can wake up feeling the way you're feeling today with the energy, the optimism, the commitment, how good could it be tomorrow? Doesn't that just blow your mind? As good as Debbie feels today with her 13 years, how good can Debbie feel tomorrow with one more day? Which leads me to my last point for today. Knowing that we have a message that starts from within and moves outward helps solidify our own self-image, which is so important. My self-image reminds me of the value that God places on me, that I then want to become a better reflection of who God is. Isn't that important? Isn't that critical? I want to be a reflection. So if I tell you that God could and would if he were sought, that I owe everything to God as I understand God, and my image reflects what you want, isn't it important that that image of who I say God is consistent with what you see in me? My message moves. It starts from within. It's created within, because God is a spirit and we must worship God in spirit and in truth. And then as it begins to rebuild me through this Kintsugi process of restoration with gold and the purity, and all those broken pieces over time are put back together. And I'm using the past plus the power to create a new present and new future. I am able to move more forward with more confidence to share this message of hope, that you will understand that you have value that gold and the proper process can repair. I hope this helped you today. I'll tell you what, I am even more energized after presenting it to you than I was when this came to mind. Again, I've been from broken to whole for a long time, and I love to introduce this topic to you. And I want to thank John Barker for reminding me that this was something that he and I had discussed a long time ago, and we touched on elements of it. So I thank you, John, for your insight and your friendship and everything that you do, and for Jane and for JJ. And now Pablo is coming on board, the Recovery Guy movement, this team, that we want to create this Kintsugi element and process that's based on synergy, that takes two or more components, and as they would be independently powerful, combined, they create an even greater element which we can live effectively and productively one day at a time. Thank you for joining us. My name is Robert, and I am the Recovery Guy.